Hello, I'm Gordon Sharpholster with Testament of One. I have the great fortune of being here with John Wagler, who's been actually formative in helping Testament of One through putting together a number of students to try and give us a focus group to understand that in actual fact it doesn't matter what Testament of One is as far as clothing. The important component is the message, and it had better darn well look nice on them, or they're not going to wear it. So that's the direction we've certainly gone. But John, thank you very much for being with us today.
No problem at all.
Cheers. I've spoken with John on a number of occasions, and he is the pastor for discipleship and student ministries at Commonwealth Chapel. He's married to Lacey, and they have two kids who happen to be twins, who happen to be, I believe, 2 years old.
Yes, sir.
So the trifecta, if you will, on age. So they're very busy. And Lacey's also been involved in student ministry for years as well. John's also involved with Chi Alpha, which is a ministry. It's a college ministry, and they're on a number of different campuses. And I asked if John might tell us a little bit about his baseball, because he's quite a rock star in the past, and so he's turning 3 shades of red at the moment. But I thought it was pretty cool, because that's actually had a formulation in the way that he carries himself today with his faith and his life and his momentum. Could you tell us just a little bit about your baseball career?
Well, I'll say a little bit. I feel like it was forever ago. But my baseball career got me to college. God had gifted me with an ability to play, and it expanded my kind of view on what was out there through the recruiting process and everything, and in the amount of friends and what I consider even family has come from my baseball career. It's just unbelievable. Even in the midst of when I wasn't living my faith out how I should and all those other things, how I can now look back and see how God was using certain aspects of baseball through discipline, through appreciation of the team, through hard work and understanding of certain things that has really transformed who I am in Christ, how I go about my faith, and all other aspects of my life, from being a husband and a father as well.
I know that what we wanted to talk about, I usually bring up some concepts and some ideas on what are some of my suggestions for topics, but as I think you've seen before with some of the people that we've been lucky enough to sit with, they've also got some of their own ideas, which I think is refreshing. So it's not a testament of one, hey, here's what the topic's going to be. It's, what do you think, what resonates with you, what's important to you, and John's got quite a lot to say in lots of different spheres, which I think is really refreshing. It's refreshing for you, our viewers. But when I asked him of anything that you could speak of, and knowing a bit about myself a little, and certainly knowing what I've been trying to do with and actually creating with Testament of One and the momentum we have now, is basically when asking you about what you would like to talk about, something that resonated with you was actually with Testament of One as far as the topic. Could you maybe share a little bit about that?
Sure. I love the part of your theme or your motto of this conversation, that it continues and it's an ongoing thing, because when I look at my faith, I see how God has been constantly trying to have this conversation with me. When I went to college at University of Richmond, and I look back on how I even ended up there through getting the baseball scholarship there and everything, and how God was trying to use me there and trying to have this conversation with me. But at that point in time, it was a one-way conversation. I wasn't an active listener in this conversation. And as time went on during those 4 years there, and I had this element to who I was, that I always knew what was right. I grew up in church, and I had a faith at a young age, and I got away from that. And what I realized is that at one point, the conversation with God had to turn into Him almost screaming at me. And what happened at a critical point in my life was I had graduated from college, had hoped to play baseball on a professional level, and it didn't work out. And it came down to this one night where there was this enormous storm in Richmond, and sonic boom happened. And it was about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was just awakened by this enormous boom, exactly what it is, a sonic boom. But this bizarre thing happened. It was like I was startled, and as I opened up my eyes, I felt like I couldn't see anything. And what came rushing into my mind was that the world had just ended, and that God was coming back, and this was like Armageddon and all these other things. And so I was kind of freaking out in my head. And I knew that had that happened, that my parents would be gone, because they were good, solid, Bible-believing people.
Right.
So naturally, I'd pick up the phone. I call my parents at 3:30 in the morning or so, and my dad answers the phone, and I get this just sigh of relief because I was like, oh, they're here. Fine. And my dad says, what's going on? What's going on? And I said, I feel like I just had this happen, and I felt like the world had just ended, but I knew that if you guys were on the other line, that, everything was okay. So he just hangs up the phone, doesn't worry about it. My mom calls back about 30 seconds later to have an hour-long conversation with me about where I was. But here's the thing that happened there. At that moment in time, God started having a conversation, and it was a more dominant conversation to where He was forcing me to see Him in everything, forcing me to see who He was, forcing me to see who I was. And from that point on, I began to have this two-way conversation with God. And what I started realizing was there was a time in my life with what I worshipped was baseball. And that's what shaped me.
Sure.
And then there became a time in my life where God has this essentially screaming match at me. And I realized then at that point that my worship had been my job. And so what began to shape me was money and my time and my job and all this other stuff. And He started showing me these different things. And then when I got married, He started showing me how the best way I could be a great husband was begin to let my worship of Him and Him alone to begin to shape me. And so as I became a father, again, He started showing me the worship of Him and Him alone. As that begins to shape me, I will become a better father, a better employee, a better pastor, a better friend, all of those things. That as long as I singularly focus on Him alone as my worship and begin to peel back the layers of who I am, that as long as my focus is there, everything else begins to take care of itself. And so I've had a lot of students ask me, what's the one thing I can work on, or what are things that can help me in my next endeavor or whatever. And I always say, as you begin to peel back the layers and get away all the fluff, the money, the maybe great place you could travel or whatever, if you peel it all back, what does it boil down to? Does it boil down to what your selfish interests are? Or does it boil down to a life that glorifies God? And that through that, He will use you in ways that you've never, ever imagined. And I stand here, or sit here, now as a pastor, which, if you would have talked to me 6 years ago, there's no way. If you would have talked to me 10 years ago, no way. But God has woven into this fabric of my life and this conversation that we've continued to have of Him just saying, trust me. Trust me on this. Trust me on this. And as you continue to worship me and push aside those other things, as Scripture says, that my path became straight and everything started to become clear. And I now see that as I sometimes would thought, hey, I need to take this leap, I can take that leap knowing that God's got my back. that I can trust Him in that.
Interesting. Well, if you asked me a few years ago, would I be doing something like Testament of One, of trying to create the fantastic lifestyle brand that is more based on, you know, what you were initially speaking about, with based on a conversation, based on a fellowship, based on championing the champions who are out there, who are selflessly helping others, and to put a lot of cool factor or appeal around this type of lifestyle, the foundation of faith in God. No, I was selling doormats online. That's what I was doing, personalized doormats, and having quite a go at that. But listen, I would like to put you on the spot and ask that in the future, potentially you would you might come back and talk to us about further on this and on your walk, and on thankfully grounding us a little bit on how your passions before and how they've developed and grown, and how they've evolved in your life ultimately makes you the kind of man you are today. And whether it's an employee, or whether it's a father, or whether it's certainly I'm sure a better father and a better husband, and your ability to reach and to touch out to many who are in their stages of life, of youth certainly, who have the opportunity to come across this and have the opportunity to create a foundation and grow in their lives. We'd love to speak with you again.
That'd be great. I would love to keep the conversation going. And so anytime you would want me to come back and talk, I would love to. And I know, you know, my motto, the excuses for losers. If you want to tackle that one, I'd love to talk about that for a little bit.
Great,
So.
Great. Well, that would be some serious meat and potatoes. Excuses are for losers, and actually understanding what the difference between excuses are and reasons. We'll circle back with John in the future on that. But thanks very much for being with us today here at Testament of One, and we will look forward to coming up with another profile in the next week. Thank you so much, and thank you very much, John.
Thank you
Appreciate
for having me.
Cheers.